So, thank you very much for staying for the third talk of the evening. We do appreciate it. I'm joined by two esteemed guests, which I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. But we're on a panel today to talk about all around Agentic AI. So we are running slightly over, but the plan is to do a few questions. A few kind of topics we've got to discuss, and then a few questions after. So please feel free to save them first. So before we get started, you've already heard enough of me speaking this evening, so I'll pass over to Himanshu. Do you want to introduce?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Thank you all. I'm Himanshu Sahni. I'm an AI and machine learning specialist at AWS, and I'm the UK public sector lead and work across a few public sector verticals for AI. Thank you.
Jim Stamp. I work for Maytech. I'm the head of tech at Maytech, and there's a lot of tech in that sentence. We look after public sector customers. We only do work for central government, health, etc. And I've been a software engineer for too many years, and now I'm a manager of software engineers. So look after software engineering, cloud engineering, data engineering, etc., etc. The full bit.
So, Agentic AI, it's everywhere at the moment. Before we kind of delve into the main kind of topics, just a quick one to get started. What's been your favourite use case of Agentic AI that you've seen personally?
I've seen a few now. Which favourite's a good one? Well, I guess the one I quite liked, and also was one which we did with the Manchester Airport Group recently. One of the reasons I like is that it was quite comprehensive, and it was about setting up kiosks at the airports which answer questions autonomously. And they also had cases where someone just wanted to figure out where the nearest toilets or where's a good shop to buy shoes. It would come up with a map using agents to invoke a third-party API. And it took us 9 months to get from inception to production, just the amount of effort it takes. And there's a lot of learning for all of us to get to production, how to get agentic solutions working. So I think from that point of view, it was quite a good learning experience for all of us.
Interesting.
I'm going to go the other way around. The worst is not my favourite. I was trying to integrate one of the tools that I was writing with our HR system, and found out that their MCP, rather than giving me authenticated, authorized access to the HR system, gave me access to everyone's records, because they'd written it from the point of view of the people team rather than the people with the agents. So yeah. Luckily, I didn't have the access token to do it, but it tried really hard. So.
Yeah, very interesting on Manchester Airport Group. They've got a fantastic CTO who's actually at the AWS AI Loft in Manchester. They're doing a lot of awesome stuff over there, which is good to see. So going on in terms of kind of pathway to productions, etc., and going from POCs to production, it's been quite a bit of a blocker for a lot of particularly large enterprise organizations. What's been your experience around taking POC workloads to production, and how do you kind of do that dynamic shift of going to production?
So I think the main blockers that I've seen are largely around access and governance. And I think it depends on the customer type. I think for us in the public sector, governance is the main blocker. That's the main challenge that we have. I don't think in the private sector governance, having been in the private sector for a decent chunk of my life as well, governance is less of the issue. It's the finding the data that's the problem. If you can set up the data catalogs, if you can set up those discovery services, getting those agents to actually be able to access it and find the data that it needs through either MCPs or direct API calls. That's the hard bit. Within the public sector, setting up the right policy, AWS policy, and making sure that you have the right to access that data, that you have the legitimate use rights to be able to process it. That's the hard bit. And I think getting that right is still a problem that they're struggling with at the moment.
Yeah, no, I do agree with the governance piece. I think there's of course technical challenges which can be overcome. There are solutions and scaffolding you can add, but I think across both governance and the technical challenges, the common bit is that it's a probabilistic technology, and working with that, scaffolding has to be of certain kinds, but the mindset shift is also equally important as to how are we going to have humans and AI interact. Obviously, right now, there's a lot of human in the loop, in the mix, which makes sense. But I think it's moving more and more towards human oversight and then getting these to do more things. Anytime you try and do more things autonomously with anything, I mean, you can look at autonomous driving as a classic case. We've had Elon Musk telling us for 10 years, I'm going to have cars doing things in the next 18 months. I think we must give them credit that finally they're getting really close, but look how long it took for them to get there. Same thing applies with agents. Trying to get them to be too autonomous is never an easy task. So there's always going to be human oversight, and getting that governance right, that mindset right, is where we find the basic and those challenges, to your point as well.
So one of the kind of main other challenges that we're seeing is around kind of learning and development within AI. So my first kind of question is, what kind of upskilling have you both done? Your own experience learning about agentic AI and data and AI, and then also what's kind of been the best thing that you've seen for organisations, particularly in the public sector, to upskill around AI as well?
So the government have been running one big thing, and this year's one big thing is data. And it's been interesting watching them learn more about AI generally, but also agentic. They are getting there slowly. And we talked about agentic systems there, and most of the questions afterwards were around prompt engineering. So I think there is a gap between what they see as AI and what agentic systems can deliver. So yeah, I think that's a challenge that we're struggling with, but they are making big inroads. They are definitely working hard to understand it. Personally, I've spent the last 6 months since Claude Code came out every day going, shit, we're going to be in trouble here. So yeah, I think it's going to be fun. Trying to teach a load of software engineers best ways of using these tools and helping them understand that their jobs aren't at risk and that we need to use these things and start understanding them quickly before we get told how to use them, I think is, for me, the biggest challenge that we're struggling with at the moment. So convincing people that they're safe, and actually it's within our power as engineers to define how we use them, I think is probably the largest learning problem that I have right now.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, so I think from a learning point of view, just keeping up with the services that AWS keeps coming up, is what firstly keeps me busy, and that's one way.
I have an agent to help.
Yeah,
does the tech scan every morning for me.
So yeah, and now I guess things like Kiro, is making it learning a little nicer, quicker in some ways. But at the same time, there's more things like Agent Core, because sometimes I focus a bit more on prototyping, and because I'm not now doing production grade stuff. That's for partners and customers to do. So that's a different thing to actually doing production grade stuff, which I actually help partners or customers to learn. But yeah, sometimes from a distance. So my learning's a bit more on experimentation at the minute. In terms of helping our customers, we conduct learning needs analysis. There's a separate team which goes about doing that and looks at the organization holistically, because there's different stakeholders with different personas who have different needs within the organization. So some, as you're saying, are keen on getting more understand prompt engineering. Just what's AI about? How can it help me from my day-to-day things that I can do? And then there are others who are building more advanced applications, and they are grappling with this challenge of how do I deal with the hallucinations and unpredictable responses. So we look at the personas, and there's too many services to talk about, but then just match what's appropriate to them.
Interesting. So that's very insightful. So kind of looking at the cost element and kind of it's a large investment, AI, into any organisation. How are you kind of helping customers or clients in terms of creating that business value and business case to be able to deliver AI?
Firstly, it's important to qualify use cases and apply AI where it makes sense, and rather than just going deep into calculations and whether ROI is a good thing to do. And the use cases where we find a good fit between business value and feasibility, then you go deeper into how do we articulate the value. And for example, one popular use case which applies to many government departments as well is contact center modernization. There's how do we make the agents, human agents in this case, make them more productive, be able to respond to queries quicker, be able to answer queries in the first call itself. These are kind of things that contact centers do measure. So what's been helpful in doing these exercises sometimes is firstly have a very clear baseline of where someone is at before you apply technology. So you know what's the before and what's the after. Otherwise, it's very difficult to quantify what's actually improved at all. Then defining the right metrics, then also remembering that there are second order effects. Like you've reduced the time it takes for someone to respond to queries, but then also sometimes means that there's less churn in the organization. So do not forget those things and then bring them all and then try and quantify them. That sometimes helps.
Yeah, the largest cost saving we've made is not to use AI. I think there are a lot of government departments that have a directive, a mandate to use AI. They've been told they have to use it, and a few times we've gone, we could just use natural language processing to fix that, and it's going to be significantly cheaper. And so, yeah, that's probably the largest cost saving. We actually for one large department acted on their AI advisory board and stopped several projects as it's gone through that department, to the point where we have now set up our own AI advisory board internally, so that if projects start coming into the organisation, we can say, maybe you shouldn't do that. Because it is a sledgehammer. It really is a big old sledgehammer, and you don't need it most of the time. So, it's fashionable. Everyone wants to do it, and all of the engineers are like, can we? It's like, no, step away from that LLM. Never mind agentic systems, which are another level of expense if you let them run riot. So, yeah, just saying no.
So obviously, the best way I've found personally to kind of implement AI at scale is to have really high quality data. And what a lot of organisations think is, let's just put an LLM or AI into it, but they don't kind of look at their underlying data strategy or kind of quality of data. So what's kind of both of your viewpoints around that? So how have you kind of helped organisations to support their wider data strategy? Any tips?
I think data quality is usually the problem, but I don't think it's having good data. I say this all the time. If you've seen any of my content, you will have seen me saying this. It's not about the quality of the data, it's knowing the quality of the data. If you've got bad data, but you know it's bad, you can do things to help. You can extract features, you can do processing, you can clean it, you can throw stuff away. If it's great data, brilliant, you don't need to do anything. But knowing the difference between it is the first thing that I tell our customers to put in their data strategy. The first thing you should be doing is quantifying the quality, not setting up governance patterns, not setting up all kinds of things. You need to start working out what the data and how good it is, because without knowing that, you're just looking for correlation. We had one customer that was fitting a really nice line of dots. And it was like, yeah, it's making a brilliant prediction. Yeah, but I can fit any line to that circle of dots, and it's making a prediction, because they didn't know the quality of their data. So yeah, that would be.
Yeah. No, I do feel data quality alongside governance, and sometimes it even trumps it, I feel, because without good data, you can't even do prototypes, let alone get into production.
You can usually do prototypes because they'll give you the good data to do the prototype.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm coming to. At what people sometimes, when you identify use cases for AI or Gen AI, they just look at the AI piece, but not look at the data and AI piece in together. And for prototypes, quite often you can come up with fabricated data, synthetic data, and make it look like that looks good. And that's also where finally, when you're coming to actually implementing the production use case, you struggle. So pilots itself, firstly, either two things in parallel, data and AI, or if you can combine them, that becomes a little more difficult in some organizations, but you need to think about it upfront rather than as an afterthought that you do. But yeah, and as Jim was also saying, if you know that your data is not in good state, if the first exercise is to use AI sometimes to extract data and create features out of it, have a think about what you will need for your AI models to be successful. Do you need to fine-tune your models? Do you need to pre-process your data and then just make them available for RAG architectures, whatever it might be, back from that, then make sure the data is ready before you choose the use case that you're doing.
So we'll do one last question, ask one more question before we open it up to the audience. So obviously security is a big priority of any organisation. What's been both of your experiences with security and AI?
I think the HR system. I think that's just a brilliant example. I think as someone who ran data engineering teams previously, getting product people to think about data as a product will go so far around the security. So designing your data so that it's ready for consumption in the right way, that you've thought it through, in the same way that AWS, push that actually all APIs should be external APIs, whether they're internal or external. They should be external APIs. Same thing with your data. Design it to be used from the start. Then you've got the right policies attached to it. Then you've got the right semantic labeling of. Then you understand what it is, how it can be used, how it should be used, and how you set up those security policies around it. Then you can start wiring things into it. If you haven't got those in that foundational base layer, then you can't realistically wire any agent in via an MCP. And that's exactly what went wrong with that HR system. They didn't think about who would be the user. They thought about, well, our users are the HR team, not all of the engineers that are going to be wiring up Claude code to the HR system to try and shortcut the objective system or something. You've got to think about your users.
Yeah, and security, privacy, they go hand in hand. You're looking at the data, obviously sensitive information, looking at then also who's accessing it. And then, there are obviously techniques available to make sure that if those things exist, then you have steps taken to sanitize the data, that ready. But then this is probably the thing that we faced last year with GenAI. But now with agents, you're now giving these entities more control to go on at times do autonomous things, and you have to now treat them in some cases just as you treat users, and you make sure that they are not they don't have access to more than what they should have. And now you also see quite a few organizations thinking about federated architectures, because you have agents that could be created by third-party entities, and you want to factor them in. So your apparatus should be able to access third-party agents where appropriate, and those third-party agents then bring their own risks, like they should have access only to what they're entitled to. So when you are bringing those things into your end-to-end architecture, you probably need to make sure that you're not taking an undue risk checking what you're getting into. Yeah, agents add that extra level of security checks that you need to think about as well now.
I think there's also an aspect of joining data together that humans don't do very well. It's quite hard for us to merge two spreadsheets together, right? In our head. Whereas agents are really good at that. And actually, if you've got two data sets that are seemingly innocent and you can join those in an automated way, that can cause huge problems. And that's not something we think through regularly as engineers. It's not a consideration that it's like, well, yeah, there's a data set over there owned by somebody else that I'm not in control of or have access to, but a third party might be able to use that joined with the one that I own, and then join those together to create vulnerability. And that starts, PII data, an IP address on its own, not a problem. An IP address with something else can suddenly become a PII data, right? So I used to work for AutoTrader. If you've got a reg plate of a car, that's not PII data in itself, but that postcode suddenly becomes PII data because you can walk around where that person lives and find their car very quickly. And so if you've got two data sets and you're not thinking about it, it's, you can join them together, right? And that's a problem that we don't naturally think through. In that case, we did because it's obvious. But in other cases, it's not as obvious.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. So we've got time for 2 questions from the audience. So, who wants to go first?
Yeah. We talked about data protection and compliance and governance and everything like that. Are people bothered, in your experience or opinion, about sustainability when it comes to using AI?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Depending on the organization, there's quite a few, ranging from someone like, I remember working with Skyscanner. This was before my time in public sector, and they were hit by COVID, and this is even before AI came into the mix. And they were challenging us that what's your carbon footprint and what kind of compute should I use? Should I use these chips or the other ones? And obviously you can extend that same thinking to GPUs or whatever else that comes into the mix. And even other organizations. I was just speaking to Cambridge University last week, and they also have in their AI policy that they need to be sustainable. So yeah, it's not, even though we have President Trump completely reversing all the emphasis on the green policies, they're still very much alive.
Okay.
We have, a lot of our engineers are really, really interested in it and push back quite firmly on excessive use of compute. We have a FinOps sort of proposition, and alongside it a carbon accounting sort of proposition. They sort of go hand in hand, because if it's costing you money, it's probably costing you carbon. So yeah, I think that it's definitely something we offer to our customers. Quite a few of them have taken it on and started thinking about actually where can we allocate resource more in a smarter way, be more elastic, etc., spot instances, etc. So yeah, especially in the data space, yeah, it gets very expensive very quickly if you're not careful, and it is something we proactively manage.
Doing less is the best way to be sustainable.
Always be doing less. Yeah. Just say no.
Yeah.
It's really interesting on FinOps front. I once worked with a customer when I was back in consulting, and they had a junior engineer who spent $260,000 in a weekend on a machine learning kind of thing that he just left and spin up. He was trying to impress his boss on the Monday. His boss was not very impressed, is all I will say. But yeah, it's really interesting how costs can spiral through. I once, a different kind of story, I was once with another customer, and we literally just logged onto the portal with a competing CSP and saved hundreds of thousands in about 2 hours, just because, we didn't realise to turn that server off. But yeah, it does happen. So yeah, if you're not doing FinOps, speak to Maytech.
Definitely get it done. Only if you're public sector.
Public sector. Cool, yes, last question. Yeah. We've only got time for one, I'm afraid. So, yeah.
One is that based on the public sector, both of you are having experience in the public sector. So, what are the key use cases which have made way to production recently? That is one question. Second thing is that because this Agent Core has just announced around a couple of months back, 3-4 months back, and until before this, how exactly if any agent has gone to production, especially in the terms of the public sector, and how it had been done, because if we are not using the Agent Core. And third question is, I am also dealing with the public sector and many clients, so I find really challenging, because you need a lot many control and governance here to even access any data. So how easy or difficult it would have been for the team who is proposing even AI to the public sector and getting an approval, because even as a person you need a security clearance and 100 things, and giving that kind of approval to agent is a kind, I'm not sure that how easy or difficult it would be. These are 3 questions. So
which one do you want to take?
You probably go first, and then I'll take the.
I think the engineers and the liability that we have as engineers. The liability insurance generally doesn't cover autonomous systems, and so you should probably look at your liability insurance if you're working on AI systems. And so if you're building systems and it's the business person that's signed off, it's going to be you that's woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning if it goes wrong. It will always be the engineer rather than the service owner. They might get woken up at 6 o'clock, but not at 3 a.m. I think there's also the aspect of, if it goes wrong, it will be you that gets it as the engineer, and if you haven't got that insurance, that's really important. So yeah, definitely check your insurance or your company's insurance, because especially in government systems, if it goes wrong, you might be in trouble. Probably in commercial systems as well, you might be in trouble. Right? It has happened. So yeah.
Cool. I'll try and quickly answer the other 2. Now, the use cases in public sector, there are many. There are some very specific to the vertical you work with, like in defense, you use satellite imagery to detect certain things, like Chinese aircraft carriers for NATO countries, and there's all sorts of other things that you might end up doing. Or you are in healthcare, you're looking at lung scans to detect rare diseases. So these are very specific to that vertical. But if you want to pick one which is more common across many departments, I'd go for something like agentic document processing. Document processing is common to any many public sector ones. And with agents, you can become a bit more proactive. To your question about before Agent Core, we had, say, something like Bedrock Agents that was last. I wouldn't attention, but for but Agent Core is definitely the way to do things now. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you. Perfect. Cool.